All right, it's 3 o'clock. Let's call the meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Please silence your cell phones, and I'll take roll. George McQuistion here. Brian Fitzsimmons. Betsy Runstetter. Donna Cervantes. Jorge Chonico. Here. Matt Guillory. John Robeson. Here. Ben Sellers. Here. Jeff Struble. Here. Okay, we have a quorum. The item number 2 is approval of the minutes and deference to Rita and the workshop. I will entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I move approval. This is Betsy Brunstetter.
Second.
Okay, that's Brunstetter, Guillory. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. We zip down to item 6A, cases for individual consideration, 601 Northwest 6th Street. Michael.
Yes, this case is a proposal for a single structure to house 3 residential dwelling units at the northwest corner of Northwest 6th and North Dewey Avenue. The project includes a attached garage structure at the rear that is accessed from the alley, and also includes a landscaped area in the front yard that incorporates a pool. The project meets all the development standards that are applicable to the site, with the exception of a concern about the site distance triangle at both 6th and Dewey and the alley in Dewey. The proposed fencing that is necessary in the front yard to enclose the pool area will encroach into that site distance triangle area. And additionally, the garage itself is built into an area that we believe is also subject to the site distance triangle criteria. We've had a little bit of coordination with the Public Works Department on this, and they've already told us for sure that they don't feel that the conditions created by this project at the corner of 6th and Dewey would create a traffic hazard. And with regard to the garage situation at the rear, they are debating whether or not it even applies to an alley or not. We happen to feel it does, so we're just waiting for them to come back to us and give us some feedback on how they're going to approach that. In essence, however, because of that, that's the only consideration we've identified with this project. We've recommended approval to the Commission with the condition that they receive the waiver from the Director of Public Works regarding the site distance triangle at either location. That concludes our presentation.
I'm Clint Spencer, and this is Jeff Parker with 405 Architecture.
Hey, could you guys talk into the mic only because if people are watching at home, they can't hear it.
Sure. I'm Clint Spencer. I'm the developer. I'm Jeff Parker. I'm the architect. So we'll be happy to.
Okay. You guys have any questions?
I have a concern. I'm the protector of the pedestrian. And looking at these drawings, great drawings, great way to fill the site, except the elevation, the south elevation and the east elevation tell the tale. We've got a pool out in front, and of course you want to have a little privacy around the pool, so you've got a kind of a fence hedge type of thing going on there. And it, in comparison to the sidewalk, it looks like it might be like 7 or 8 feet tall.
Well, there's a 3-foot grade change from the sidewalk that actually holds the grade of the lot. So 3 feet of that is a retainer wall, which has to be, and so the hedge is open to basically abide by the openness that a fence is supposed to be. So there's the logic for the hedge. Because we have to have a fence on the other side to adhere to the pool guidelines to protect occupants from entering the pool. So the logic there was to break up the transition of that 7-foot element, because 3 feet has to be for the grade, and then so it's really just 4 feet of hedge that is what we consider kind of open and sort of a nice feel to the pedestrian who's near it. There's tree canopy there, and so, but we had to have something there to, because of the pool. And the pool, the logic for the pool was there was a 20-foot setback to kind of adhere to the existing structures on that side of the street, or else we would have liked it came all the way to the property line. We kind of adhered to that 20-foot setback. And so trying to make use of that space as best as possible for the tenants, I say tenants, owners. And so to have some sort of area that they can gather, that they can have some masking. There's essentially a freeway, not a freeway, but a 4-lane, going down 6th Street right there. And so you have the sounds, and if you're out there to have a cup of coffee and stuff, you want a little small layer of protection from that, yes. And so that's the logic behind that setup.
Betsy, is your concern that it's too tall, that there's not enough interest or differentiation?
Exactly. The front door is actually kind of on the, I guess, the east side, and this is kind of like a blank wall. I understand it's a hedge, and I do appreciate that it's alive, but it's just not very interesting for the pedestrians.
Quick question. Is the brick wall or the retaining wall, that's 3 feet, 4 feet? Mm-hmm. And so above that, is there any additional hard material, or is that just plant material that be a...
There would be a vertical picket similar to the kind of style of fencing that's done over in on Film Row and a lot of places, just steel vertical pickets, and then the hedge would grow in front of that to essentially screen that over time. It's the steel pickets would be 42 inches high, so you have 42 plus 36 for the retaining wall.
I have some concerns about the front fencing also. I noticed there's no gate or access in the front. Is that correct, or am I seeing that wrong?
No, that's correct, because of the pool. So the entry is off of Dewey, mainly because that's a 2-lane road. It feels more inviting. So yeah, the main entry is off of Dewey.
Okay. And you mentioned the 4-foot height of the fence above the retaining wall. That's, Michael, is that to be in compliance with the front yard fence requirements?
Yeah, the height of the fence is limited to 4 feet, but it's measured from the highest adjacent grade. So it's measured from the interior courtyard.
Okay.
I think we addressed this a little bit in the workshop when we got our group together, and the idea of a residential building totally ignoring the downtown requirements of connecting with the pedestrians and making pedestrians, the walk.
Right, but you also have the cottage district standards which require the setback. So
Right, I understand the setback thing, for sure.
Right.
Well, and part of the other reason too, along the east elevation, which would be technically the entry of the building, we don't have glass going all the way to the ground there, just for privacy and security reasons. We don't want people sitting in their living room feeling like they're sitting in a fishbowl that sits right out on the street. And we had to have some windows that come down for egress, obviously, but we tried to make that where the occupants, that those units would feel like they had some sort of privacy but still had visual connection. So we raised the sills, the windows up a little bit where they don't come all the way to the ground.
Yeah, but we tried to, since this abuts the DBD, we paid a lot of attention to how we would orchestrate this development to where we came all the way out to the east side, because Dewey, further down on Dewey to the south, there's Keith and Heather's house that's built on the property line. There's also Rick Dowell's that's on the property line. We stayed all the way to the property line where we could get to the property line because of the conflicting cottage district and then the regular DTD1, what they say about setbacks and stuff. We had to match the rhythmic setback of the existing structures as to not come all the way to the street, because then it would not match those. And so because of that, we thought we'd hold the edge, which would be nice to have an edge there, even it's a retaining wall, but it can hold the edge a little bit and define that. On the other side of 6th, properties that hope to develop in the near future would like to come out, kind of redefine that edge coming all the way to the property line. But because of the 20-foot setback, it's kind of made it difficult to, ideally, from an urban perspective, could have came all the way to the front and then had the building built all the way to the front, which, that would have been ideal, but it wouldn't have met the criteria that I've had to abide by. So we were trying to make use of that 20-foot setback space, and because of the, and we've had a lot of different folks are wanting a pool or a place where they can go and kind of mask, have some fountains in it, kind of mask some of the sounds and kind of have a space for them. And so because of that, the hedge and the fence had to be there. A 4-foot layer had to be added. And then even if the pool wasn't there, honestly, because of the 4-lane street, I think I don't put words in anyone's mouth, but at the same time, if you're sitting out there, you have all these cars passing by, it's not quite as pedestrian of a street right now. Hopefully it will be in the future. But, so.
I guess my concern is that if we allow you guys to build what amounts to a 7 or 8 foot wall in the front of the building on 6th Street, that sets a precedent. And then do all of the residential structures that are there right now feel like, well, we could try for that too? And I understand where you're coming from. I understand the whole setback thing. It's just, I think for the future of this area, we need to look very closely before we approve a wall like that on 6th Street.
My question would be, being as landscaping is landscaping or shrubbery even in our purview to it's not a wall, it's planting.
The applicable statute, I think, is the one regarding front yard fences, Article 59, 12-200.3, and I have an issue. I don't see how this is in line with subparts I and J of that, and J specifically talks about vegetation and hedges, both of which are dealing with within 25 feet of right-of-way lanes of any public or private street, or 12 feet of the intersection of any private driveway, or a pavement edge or maintained portion of a public or private street. And this seems to be pretty directly in conflict with both of those to me.
Matt, what section was that again?
Article 59, 12-200.3. It's front yard fences, which is covered under accessory buildings for some odd reason.
How does this one differ from the Lynn House?
The Lynn House?
Has the same retaining wall and fence?
Correct.
But it doesn't, well, one, I didn't
It faces
vote
the
on
side
that.
street, not
Yeah.
the front yard. That's the main difference. But the interpretation of the height of the fence and the retaining wall, it's the same thing.
Yeah, both the two that I have an issue with, I guess, here are both dealing with the intersection and the right-of-ways and the site triangle. So, I mean, it just kind of comes back to the original issue that Michael had pointed out as a concern in the staff report.
We did discuss with the applicant the potential to approve the structure and defer approval of any improvements in the front yard until they come back with perhaps some alternatives for design of that area in the front yard. So that's one way you could perhaps deal with the project today if you are not comfortable about approving anything in the front yard.
Can I ask, just to pick up on something Ben said, if the shrubbery wasn't there, how do we correspond? How do we correspond to the codes? Because we've got a picket fence, we've got a contemporary picket fence, but it's a picket fence. Is the height? Is that you said it was 3.5 feet, 42 inches? Is it? I don't recall.
It's a 3-foot retaining wall with a 4-foot tall fence as measured from the interior courtyard at the pool.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking that you know, if you have grade, you have grade, and then so you build on that, and then where are we in terms of the picket fence and the ordinance, and are we, is the picket fence not overly high? Do we have the? I read it and I forgot where it is. The fence.
The picket fence is not a solid fence.
Correct. Right.
It's a iron fence?
They'd be steel, vertical steel angles, like 2x2 angles that would be vertical at like 4 inch on center, horizontally.
Is that like you mentioned the stuff on Film Row?
Yeah, similar to the stuff that's in front of Sliver.
Because we'd have to have something there. You have 3 feet. You have to have. How would we address that?
So Jeff, does that meet the code as far as climbing over the fence? I mean, creating a ladder, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I mean, it's vertical, so there's nothing that's.
Oh, I thought he said it was horizontal. I'm sorry.
The pickets would be at intervals of 4 to 6 inches horizontally.
The picket. Do you know my landing in the back of my house?
The pickets themselves are vertical.
That's in front of the Sliver building. That's the kind of fence it's going to be.
It's on the elevations.
Sure. I just heard him say we're horizontal, and I thought
I was talking about the spacing.
I'm
sorry. I was talking about the spacing of the pickets. It's on the elevation. It shows on the east and it shows on all the elevations but the north elevation. No, the line drawing elevations. There you go. And we also did lots of things to try to mitigate that feeling so much like a wall. On that same sheet there, you'll see that small section that shows where we're going to have the retaining wall, and it is in one plane, and then the fence itself is actually back from the street a little bit, and then the hedge would be planted in front of that. And then on the sidewalk side, we also have a small row of a planting bed, and then sidewalk, and then we're also going to have the street tree. So there's several layers of things going on. It's not just the 7-foot vertical sheer imposing thing. It tries to step back and mitigate some of that height and scale by adding texture and some plane changes. Because again, we wanted to deal with the fact that the occupants of the pool need privacy, but we also wanted to be sensitive to the pedestrian experience there and them not feeling like they're just walking past a 7-foot tall brick wall, which they're not.
Right. So the height is within code.
Yes.
The pickets are within code.
Yes.
You've done your best to add a little bit of plane change in landscaping, so it's not just a monolithic planar thing right across. Right. I would also, I think Betsy's making a worthwhile point. I would also point out, though, that on 6th, on 6th Street in particular, you have grade, you have the setback, and you have the houses up there on your block, such that there's not a great deal of interaction with the pedestrian. And then just across the street, you've got Emerson School, which you've got like no interaction with the pedestrian. It's not an easy decision for me.
The reality is that we want to have interaction with pedestrians. Mm-hmm. So if we create a situation where, if you have a pool out there, the first thing I saw when I saw your site plan, I was like, a pool on 6th Street? If you have a pool out there, you're going to have the privacy. I mean, there's no way around it. And you're going to create a site-proof type of environment. And I would be more comfortable if you could come back with another solution. I don't know that that's what everybody else thinks, but...
What would be to meet the fence requirements? Because even on a 3-foot grade change, you'd have to have some sort of railing not to...
We're going to have to have fall protection up there anyway because it's greater than a 30-inch drop
So
from
what
the
would-
top of that retaining wall.
What would you suggest as to be the type of barrier, or not barrier, I don't want to use the word barrier because I agree I don't want to cut off the pedestrian, but what would you suggest to be the material to prevent somebody from...
I mean, you can do a number of things. You could terrace smaller retaining walls and create a situation where you don't have a barrier. And I don't want to design your thing. I wouldn't design it. I think it's a great project with the exception of the interaction with 6th Street.
What about, okay, so I'm going to ask this question, and feel free to say you don't want to get into the design of it, and I'll get that, but it seems like there's a balance between the privacy needs and the pedestrian interaction. What if there was some type of translucent plexi material? Not that you guys would even want to do that, but I'm just trying to get at, does that allow for kind of a translucency that makes you feel better about it, or alleviates the issue, or not so much?
I think there's just a number of ways you can do it. I think the translucent, I think a plexiglass wall would just be ugly, so I can't really say that would be a great solution. But I think there's a lot of, I mean, Jeff is a good designer. He can come up with another solution that doesn't push out completely to that street, step it back a little bit, give a little bit of relief.
There is an existing planner or encroachment of another retaining wall that was built, what looks to be into the easement. Is that a possibility to hold that because it's already an existing? I mean, I'd have to be a revocable permit, but could I, use some of that stair step? I guess that's already in place, but it would be a stair step that it's actually some of it looks to be in the easement. But I wouldn't mind holding that stair step effect that's there, but it's just not on my property. So you see what I'm saying?
So easement, do you mean the sidewalk?
Yeah, so if you have the 3-foot retaining wall, if the property line where the pins are, like there's a stair step, there's actually some brick that's up about 18 inches separate from the other wall that looks to be in the easement. So it's a stair step effect, but they use the city easement to accomplish the stair step. Where I wouldn't be able to go back further is because of the size of that space, that 20-foot setback, to make that a really good planned usable space to where it's not, 9 feet to spend in there, spend time in. It's actually a little bit more substantial. So using a stair step effect, but coming in a little bit more into the easement.
And it would, if we did that, it would shrink the sidewalk, which we've actually increased.
Right.
And that's not going to be within our discretion to give away city easements, but ADA is going to apply to that and all kinds of different things. I wouldn't think that that's going to be a realistic option.
Betsy, so the interplay with the pedestrian, you had mentioned seeing the front door, you had mentioned a few other things. You just want some visual interest for the pedestrian, or what are we looking for in terms of pedestrian interaction?
I'm looking for a comfortable walk, and it's not actually this project. It's what comes after this project. Next door and along the street.
You're making a valid point. I just want to try to hone in on, because if we say interaction with the pedestrian, we typically think, okay, there's the front door, there's some windows, we see the house, but given the grade change and just a desire for a pool or anything in front of the house, it's not going to be the typical pedestrian interaction with there's the front door, there's the window.
Right.
It's going to be some other form of interest to engage the pedestrian. I'm just trying to hone in on what that type of thing might
if you have
satisfy.
a patio and there's an opportunity for people to, seeing people, I think is a huge, plus.
We did, one of the things the commission should be aware of is one of the things that the applicant has talked to us about quite a bit, and we've gone back and forth on this, is that the reason the building's back where it is because of that requirement. The flip side of that approach is to move the building up and request a variance from that standard, which the applicant was concerned about getting support for that. So it's kind of 6 of one, a half dozen of the other. You could get more of that interaction if the building was closer to the street on 6 than it is today. That would either eliminate or relocate the pool. We've talked about putting the pool between the first floor unit and the garage.
Yeah.
Of course, you're going to get less sun in that situation, in that pool area. So there's a lot of different ways to slice and dice this project. But the driving factor in the design you see today, I think, is the applicant's concerned about trying to avoid having to get a variance for that setback.
I think there's a opportunity, back to George and Betsy's, to zone the whole front patio as it is, to carve it up, step it back into a couple of different areas, like, the very private, the semi-private, and the public. And that might engage the pedestrian a little more. Like, you could perhaps get a door facing south from from Unit A living room.
Well, there is a door that goes out onto that patio from that unit.
Right.
And it's screened behind the perf.
But you could get a path, potentially you could get a path.
Yeah, our concern from the beginning has just been understanding that the pedestrians need a friendly environment, but we also don't want it to feel like, because that is not the front is off of Dewey. We don't want to feel like we're inviting people to walk up there. If we start terracing it and pushing things back, it starts feeling like it makes it more inviting for people to step up on it, sit there, hang out there, and that's not the intent of the project, for people to be hanging out in the front of it. If you were in the pool, I don't think you would want that. So, anything that starts trying to invite people to walk up that part of it, we were trying to stay away from. We want to direct guests to the front entry off of Dewey.
Or if there wasn't a pool, it's the same situation if you're out there to have coffee, have some sort of layer between a 4-lane street too, for the people that actually own this. I realize it's important for the pedestrian too. It's also important as the people that live here. Their experience is important as well. And so felt like with the street trees, it has a kind of a Project 180 feel. There's a lot of really nice pedestrian experiences all along this way, on 6th and on Dewey. And you can't just layer back the whole side, because then what are the people that own this place, how are their experiences going to be as well? So they'll just be looking at people walking by.
Well, after following up what Michael said about the pool being in the middle and maybe getting the temperature of the board on moving the building up closer, is that something that you would be interested in doing, and we could kind of get our temperature on that, or is that something you really want the pool up front?
Yeah, I'm not interested in changing, because that changes the complete design of everything. And so, naturally design and time and all that is, time and money as well. And so not knowing, I'm a believer in coming to the street too. I did that on the 7 Degrees development on 5th Street. If I can get to the front of the property line, that does make sense. But not knowing how possible that is to go through that far of a design process and not have not knowing the end result or the probable end result is something that can roll the dice on, I guess, because it conflicts with some of the existing, the DTD1 and cottage. There's that I'm trying to abide and be also courteous to the neighbors there as well, going along on 6th Street and then keeping it 2 stories, for the people that have made the investments on the other side, because it is a threeplex in nature, but we felt like we've really tried to blend all of the intents of and the intentions and the desires of a lot of the people even around there too, so to answer your question, no, I need to figure out a way to try to make this work because I don't know how that would go, in a variance or in that situation. It'd be a lot of work to even get to that point, and a lot of this stuff works out nicely in terms of the structure. Now, the front, like we're talking about, I realize that's
It seems like this particular site and this block highlights the difficulty of the transition between DDT and the setbacks of the cottage district. You have matched the setback. The building to the west is a similar or identical setback. I think all the buildings to the west on the north side of 6 all the way to Lee are existing buildings that aren't going to be changed, and they're not going to be built out to the street. And then to the east you have Emerson, which is a parking lot. So the block between Lee and Dewey on the north side of 6, you're not going to have any building to the street, I don't think, in the future. And then Emerson's parking lot's not going to change. It's either a front yard at this setback or a patio. I don't know that you ever get real urban street interaction with the setback. So I think that's the kind of the underlying motivation. So if the setback's there and we accept that, building to the street probably doesn't work, even make sense for this block. It looks like it's either going to be shrubbery or just open, and I'm not sure if an open front yard is any better. It appears that the applicant's done a pretty thoughtful job of mitigating that. I would make a motion to approve the application with the caveat that the Public Works Director waives the sightline condition.
I had a question before we vote. The packet mentions the site distance triangle is illustrated in a figure below.
Yeah, we couldn't lift it out of the code and put it into the staff report, but basically it's a 25 by 25.
My question is, how far does this encroach?
It's completely in it. So if you were to look at the site right here, the site distance triangle would be 25 feet this way and 25 feet that way with a cut across that portion. And actually, this is a 50-foot wide lot, so you're probably starting about halfway through the lot and going through this area here. So it's a third of the patio pool area in the front of the building.
Technically, it would cut off 5 feet of the building shape.
Okay.
What's the...
My objection then, beyond what Betsy said, I think this could work. Trees look nice, pedestrian feel, but I have a problem with the site triangle. So.
That's been my objection. And did I misunderstand what you said in the beginning, Michael? Did the Public Works Director say that this does pose or does not pose?
Does not.
Does not pose?
Does not.
Okay.
Does not pose a...
This encroachment here at 6th and Dewey, in the opinion of the Public Works Director, at this point in time, he has determined that it does not create a traffic hazard.
Let me interject. Ben, I'm going to let your motion, for lack of a second, just fall, but I'll come back to you. The side triangle language, and if you watch some of the proceedings of the Planning Commission, other places where this comes up, it's typically not an urban issue. So if they do their safety review and they let it go, it tends to be, in my opinion, it's not that difficult to get it waived in the urban areas. And then just a little bit west of this, there's a much more egregious side triangle problem that it already exists. That's something that currently exists. So I think, I don't know how they view precedents, but there clearly are examples where they've let this type of thing
go. Well, and if you build your building in the DTD1 to the standard, you're going to violate the site distance triangle every time.
Right, because that's exactly right.
What's the degree of fall across from north to south? Or what?
It's roughly 3 feet from the doors to
From
the
the
south.
garage, from the garage to the,
Well, from the pedestrian doors, they're kind of at the entry. On up to from there north, it's not as much fall, but maybe 3.5 feet over the total site.
so just there on the pool terrace is where the fall is?
It's fairly gradual from about the front doors to the south.
Okay, so the grade though starts, let's start at the north.
Correct.
west
There's a little
corner.
more north of that, but it's more
Northeast corner.
subtle. There, we have an existing photo on one of our
I
drawings.
see the hand moving around, but it's not describing
Yeah,
what
I'm not
you're.
controlling it.
Let's start at the northeast corner.
Okay.
How much does it fall to get to the southeast corner?
Somewhere between 3 and 4 feet.
3 and 4 feet. And so the reason that we have, I take it what you've done is you've elevated the floor to one level with the garage and the breezeway, and then the floor levels are all up.
Yeah, the floor level is all the same.
Up at the north elevation.
Yes.
I'm curious as to whether or not we could get rid of a couple of feet by having more of a terraced approach to the garage and the back door somehow. Without doing it, I can't really tell you, but it seems like you've got other ways that you can get that house on grade, a little closer to being on grade at the south end without causing a lot of problems with the garage.
I don't know exactly. I mean, we'd have to look at a grading plan to see, but it would require a significant amount of cutting. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the existing photograph that we have, Mike, back on one of the first pages of the drawings, you can see. I mean, we'd have to do some pretty serious cutting, and I'm not sure.
Well, you'd have to work on that a little bit to get it maybe to work, but I'm not sure that it wouldn't be possible.
You have the alley to contend with, too.
And that would resolve some of the problems of the street wall.
Well, but then you're also, like Clem just mentioned, you have trouble accessing the garage from the alley, which is at an existing elevation.
Well, the garage would have to stay probably up there, yeah.
But that's all one, it's all on the same roof line, and all that's connected, so you don't have a drop. They're not two independent structures. It's all one.
Right, you guys are adding
continuous.
a ton of cost to do the stair step down.
The second page.
The second?
Yeah, the one that has the photographs.
My intent would probably be to second Ben's motion.
There you go. Zoom in on the
This is the first project we've seen in the cottage district in a long time that actually seems to go the extra mile to satisfy all intents of the code with scale, massing, etc. And we never had problems with any of the previous ones. This one does a fine job of satisfying the hard-to-navigate code.
I think it's a clever plan. Is there some compromise we could reach where the way Jeff has rendered this is kind of a monolithic hedge? Is there some way we could choose or agree on some other vegetation that would provide some degree of privacy for the users of the pool, but from the street you would still see human activity and be able to read that activity that was going on in the front yard?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm open to hedge types, landscape, types. Something to be beautiful. I want it to be beautiful. I want it to be something that people enjoy walking past, being next to. I'm open to suggestions on the type to balance that, where it's still porous, where it's not, but it's a layer of privacy. It doesn't have to be a complete wall. It's kind of the intent for the hedging was to have it where you could still see through it some, and so you have just it kind of dissolves a little bit. You can still see a little bit of motion behind it. It's still, you can hear sounds a little easier through it, or it wasn't so rigid, but we're open to answer your question, yeah.
Okay, just to try to push this thing forward and see where we stand, Ben, would you mind making your motion again, including a condition about the vegetation on the fence maybe being approved by staff or something?
Well, I'm not sure how we approve plant material. I don't think it's in our...
Okay.
But I'll restate the motion
Okay.
to approve the application based on Public Works Director approval of the site triangle waiver.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, that is a motion to approve with condition by Sellers and Fitzsimmons. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, let's do a show of hands if we can. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's Ben, John, Donna, Jorge, is that you? Yes. Brian, George, and Jeff. Okay, opposed? Okay, Betsy and Matt. So that motion is approved.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, item 6B, 1804 Northwest 16th Street.
This is a proposal for a two-story commercial retail building near the western edge of the Plaza District, basically at the corner of Indiana and Northwest 16th Street. The project is a building that's built towards the front setback, but has quite a bit of hardscape surface at the west side and also to the rear of the building. We've analyzed the project and compared it to the applicable regulations, and for the most part it's very compliant. However, we've raised a few issues that relate to the proposed curb cut and the driveway, and we've outlined our concerns with those features to you in our staff report. Essentially, you have a situation where the driveway would function as a two-way driveway, and the minimum width for that would be 22 feet, and I think the width on this is just 12 feet. And in addition to that, the proposed curb radii at the curb cut are proposed to be 5 feet, and for a commercial driveway, the requirement is 10 feet. So both of those deviations would require a variance recommendation. However, beyond the need for a variance, we've expressed a concern in the staff report with the fact that by and large the buildings in the Plaza District go lot line to lot line in terms of the width. And this is a building that, if you look at the site plan, you'll see here on the western side you've got a 2-foot landscape strip, 12-foot drive, and another 2-foot landscape strip with a fence. And then to the rear of the building there's quite a bit of hardscape area as well. But the main concern is the width of the building and how it does not go lot line to lot line. Now I'm going to tell you that I don't have any doubt that there are probably a handful of buildings in the Plaza District that don't go lot line to lot line, but predominantly the buildings in that district are lot line to lot line. So we've raised that as a concern for the Commission. Secondarily, the design of the building, and it's most evident in some of the renderings that were prepared and provided in the packet. It has a design on the front facade that is probably as close to compliant with and consistent with the other buildings in the Plaza District in terms of its use of brick and its proportion and scale. However, the rest of the building is using a split-face concrete block and has a very modern look to it as opposed to the front facade, which looks more, I guess for lack of a better term, old-timey and in keeping with the district. So because we have a guideline that talks about being consistent with the existing building stock, we've raised a concern for the commission with regard to that. And as a consequence of these concerns, we felt that it was probably appropriate not to make a recommendation for denial or approval, but we've recommended that the commission consider a continuance on this item, pending any debate over any of these issues. That completes our presentation.
Jeff Struble, the developer.
Tyler Holmes, the designer.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for either Michael or Jeff or Tyler? I have one just to start it off. Why is this going to be a driveway, and is there going to be parking back there, and why not try to get a variance for a single width drive, if so?
Well, to start with, we're having a trash container in the back. We do not have a tenant for the building, so we're kind of keeping our options open. We've talked with different people, and one person was wanting to have a walk-in back there and some seating back there. There could be potential for, parking back there possibly. We just don't know exactly what the use is going to be. Also, next to the property is a residential house, so we're kind of giving them a little bit of space also. It is part of the Plaza District, but still it is a residential house. Excuse me, house.
The other question I had, and Jeff, you're going to know a lot more about this than I will, but the dumpster enclosure. As I drive through the plaza and just look around, I don't frankly see that many dumpster enclosures. Would there be another way of taking care of the trash issue without having to have a truck pull all the way through and then to address staff's concern back all the way out onto the street?
I'm sure there are there's a lot of dumpsters just sitting out by the street, so there are no enclosures because they were, are there before, urban design came to the district. But, and like I said, we'll go back to, we just aren't sure what we're going to have in there, if that's going to be 4 tenants, 1 or 2 tenants, so we're just kind of keeping our options open at this point.
Not to hit on this dumpster issue too much, and a lot of the architects are going to know what kind of businesses require dumpsters and not, but Chiltepe is next door. Do they have a dumpster? I don't think they do.
They do across the street behind their convenience store.
Okay, so they take the restaurant's trash over there across the street.
Uh-huh. And there are several buildings that aren't all the way to the lot line corners. I think I own 3 of them in the Plaza District that are just part the Mule Building, the Geraldine Building, the barn. So there's several buildings that don't take the whole frontage up on the site plan.
How do you react to staff's observation that a garbage truck backing up onto 16th would pose a potential hazard for pedestrians and automobiles?
It's being an urban district and the need for a dumpster, that would almost be suggesting pulling the building off of the lot line and creating it to be less urban and maybe putting the trash can in front. So it poses, we went for going, well, basically it just poses an issue with what is the best way to do it, and in this instance we felt like the best way is that putting the dumpster in the back and still giving access off of 16. Does the code mandate a dumpster is needed? There aren't. Yeah, someone help me with that, because I look around and I see in the plaza a lot of rolling things.
Yeah, we've asked this before. It might be somewhere. I mean, the whole municipal code is whatever 80-some chapters. It might be somewhere. There might be a requirement, but there's not in 59. Just if you have one, you have to do X, Y, and Z. But just I'll mention. A prominent site in downtown that does not have a dumpster is Myriad Gardens. They take all their trash over to the Chesapeake Arena site. So there are other ways to solve your trash issue.
Right.
Rather than a dumpster. I'm not saying it's convenient, I'm not saying it's inexpensive. Trash is an issue, and there are a lot of ways to solve it.
Yeah, I'm looking at, parking is a huge issue in the plaza, and then obviously the trash is an issue. I'm kind of thinking we got to get creative here some way, because I think that staff makes a good comment about the awkwardness and potential hazards of going all the way back there for the. Anyway, I don't want to enough talking by me. Other people, please.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
So you've got all this paving, you've got this dumpster way back in the back. Can the trash truck not go back, pick up the dumpster, dump it, and then do a turnaround back there? Or is that paving not going to be designed so that it
It could.
trash could?
I believe it could. I haven't talked with a trash company to see what their exact turnaround radius they need.
Well, I know they're probably better at backing than I am, but this is incredibly long to have to back up.
It'd probably be
So-
awesome.
Well, the problem there would be if they do anything with the paved area behind the building, such as putting tables or chairs or anything like that out there, that's going to pretty much blow up any turnaround that you would have there, unless they're able to move them every time the truck comes.
I wouldn't want to have a trash truck backing down a drive and putting my building at risk. I mean, they're just, so I would imagine there'd be some kind of solution to that.
I did want to point out one other thing. Is this is a really recent version of the plan you see in front of you. It came in pretty close to right before the packet went out. And one thing that changed that we noticed after the packet went out is that they've cocked the driveway so that it's not 90 degrees to the street, and that's another variance requirement. They have to get a variance to have a non-standard, that's not a 90-degree approach.
That was to keep it on their property line? Is that?
I believe that's to keep the 5-foot radius on their property and not have that radius extend to the property owner to the west, because they have a driveway right adjacent to that property line, so it's pretty close in terms of driveway separation.
This has nothing to do with our purview, but from experience, it would probably be highly advisable to talk to a couple of trash companies, find out what they are willing to do, because they don't always care to have your contract necessarily if it's going to be too hard for them.
Well, another thing, in some instances, they actually have, you can move and roll it down the drive and put it in a more accessible spot.
Hey, Tyler, I'm going to ask you just to talk right into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did this last time too. If basically it has the ability to roll, and I mean, it could be put closer to the sidewalk for easier access. I believe at level they have it in the back of their, it's a completely different instance, but they have it in the back of their garage, and it's rolled down and actually put into, and actually like maybe like a dash spot out front of the, actually right next to the restaurant, so at Urban Johnny.
Would the driveway have been designed like that if you had another way to accommodate the dumpster? Is there another reason? Is it for parking? Is it?
Well, we're just leaving ourselves open because we don't know what our tenants are going to be.
You mentioned that this is not the westernmost property within the cottage, within the Plaza District's.
Yeah, there's one more parcel.
One more that's technically
west.
within the Plaza District, okay.
And I'm just going to ask the question because I'm wondering about it. I don't really know how it works. Is one potential approach to say, hey, look, this isn't a two-way drive. It's just a way for the garbage guy to get back to empty the dumpster. And if people on their own decide they want to drive up there and park in this paved area we got back there, hey, we tell them not to, but they're doing it anyway, and we're not going to be held responsible. I mean, is that, let's just, come out and ask, is that something you guys are thinking about?
That could be a possibility.
Okay. Well,
The building next door to this, to the west, which I know is a residential house, it has an existing driveway on the east boundary of that property, correct? So would your driveway butt up to their driveway?
We had asked that the applicant provide a site plan that showed the position of that driveway on this plan. That didn't happen before the packet went out, so we don't really have a good perspective on the distance of separation there. It's probably less than 5 feet from driveway edge to driveway edge.
It's very lightly dashed in there.
I can't see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
So it's pretty close.
Sorry, wrong line, wait.
His question was they would abut driveway to driveway.
No, there's a 2-foot buffer, and that's where we've shown we have landscaping.
The plants, okay.
Oh, there it is.
So
can
except
see
for the
right there.
plants, it
There it
would.
is.
Yeah, I see that.
So Jeff, what do the neighbors to the east do with the little inset? Is that where people park, or is that?
That's their driveway.
I believe that's seating.
Oh, the
Okay.
west or the east?
Directly to the north of Chiltepe.
I think it's,
Oh, that's there's actually a fence. That's the Chiltepe, like little cast iron fence they have, and that's where their seating is.
It's this area right here. It's fenced in, kind of outdoor patio at the front of the building.
so they probably wouldn't want your dumpster sitting right next to that. Right?
No.
Likely
Yeah, it wouldn't look very nice.
What's going on the south end of the Chiltepe's building? Is that just a yard on their south side of their building? I can't remember ever paying attention to that side.
I think it's the old easement.
it's an easement back there, and they just have like a little fenced-in area where they've got some random stuff stored back there.
This shows it pretty accurately, what's there today, to the east of the site. This is Chiltepe's, and this is their fenced patio.
Is there an alley back there?
That doesn't look like.
Oh, the south? There's no alley back there.
I think it was a big.
That'd be pretty slick if you could put your dumpster back there and they could get it from the
Yeah,
east.
Yeah, and Chiltepe's, as Jeff was saying, they don't even have their dumpster on that property. They have it across the street.
But it is a closed alley. That'd be nice if it was not.
Right.
We could actually get away with it.
Yeah. Okay, so just to try to move this along, so there are kind of two major issues that staff raised. One was the drive, and the single versus two lane and the trash, which is all kind of combined in that one issue. And the second issue was the design of the building. Does anyone have any other questions or comments regarding the drive, other than the issues that have already been raised? And if not, if so, make them or ask them, and then if not, we'll move on to the development pattern and design stuff.
I would just say that looking at some of the previous cases that we were talking about in the Cottage District with trying to transition from a residential area to a non-residential area, this is, if not literally the last commercial building before a residential area, the second to last one. So starting from this point, going eastward on that side of the street, there are a series of driveways. So, I mean, this would not be out of character with the rest of that block going eastward. It is the very edge of the Cottage District, so I don't know if that really plays a factor in this or not. I do recognize that the garbage truck getting in and out seems to pose some practical problems.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Any other comments or questions about the drive? Okay, so how do people feel about the other issue that staff raised about the development pattern and the use of materials and the CMU and that sort of thing?
And the CMU we used because we are on the property line, so we needed to have the fire rating. So then we just went ahead and used that all the way around, which you see a lot of old buildings that have the expensive brick on the front and then the different material, on the back. So that's kind of how that came about.
And just west of the Mule, and between the barn, I don't know if everyone's familiar, but the barn and, say, the corner of 16th and Blackwell there is a CMU building with not split face, but it's the bomb shelter and the ironworks place. But it is in the plaza, and that it actually is blocked.
And it does have one row of split face layer of block on it, along with metal roof edge.
Split face is a hard material to get excited about.
That's why it's in the back.
Well, it's highly visible, especially from the west, and it's a challenge to maintain over time as well, which you might think about compared to even flat CMU.
I'm just thinking out loud here, but it almost may be interesting if it was just flat CMU and it provided another opportunity for art murals.
Well, and on the side, we have 3 panels that we were having for potential art panels, and then also where people can, walk beside the building also.
The idea is maybe to do some temporary art during different holidays, or maybe just different art exhibitions, kind of as a bookend to the plaza.
I think traditionally it's not unheard of to have your sidewall be a different material than your front wall. I'm not sure that the split, I kind of like the idea of whoever said it, to have just a smooth face CMU.
And I'm not opposed to that.
But I think, and Michael, I think your issue was that in the Plaza District, you tend to have, you tend to actually have the same material.
I'm not going to deny that there's probably an example here or there that uses different materials, but predominantly you're going to see buildings all built with the same material in Plaza. And that's the predominant.
It tends to be brick, even if it's a different color on the facade.
Yeah.
And traditionally, they use the nice brick up front and
Crappy
brick in the back.
Somehow we came up with the same adjective.
Is it just is it too hard, too expensive? It's hard to get the fire rating. What if you weren't going to use CMU? What would your next best option be?
I mean, it depends on what would be in budget, but brick will typically be more expensive than block, so we could get away from split face and maybe just do regular block. But I mean, with the options, it's we could do a stucco, but I just don't think that would be right. It's eventually, I mean, it's a trend in the plaza that it's like, this is maybe why regular block could be better, but say if we did have an artist, maybe it could be an additional mural to the district. So that's another thing, but we can't propose that because we don't know if we could get that yet and what it would be. So, but it's still an opportunity. Anything's an opportunity in the plaza, truthfully. So.
And I'm not against, we just knew because of the fire rating, we went with the block and then went with the split block. I'm not, the smooth block I would be willing to consider that if that's what would make everything go smoothly, that would be fine.
And how do you react to staff's comment about the kind of faux historical or reference to the historical on the facade and then the sides being so different.
Like I said, I just went off examples of old buildings in downtowns like we've talked about where you have the nice brick and we're doing a lot of nice stuff on the front that people are going to see and then, the back, the, cheaper material.
Jeff, do you feel a need or is it personal preference to have that kind of historical feel in front, or could it be maybe similar to what you've done with Buell, where it's more of a contemporary feel, even including the facade?
No, I do feel strongly about the look of the front. The back and the sides, I'm flexible on, but I really want to I wanted this building to look like from the street that it was built in the 20s. And that's what I'm trying to go with, something that has that historic look to it. Now, the sides and the back, I'm flexible with that.
Other questions or comments?
Is that distance of where you have the brick transitioning to the block, was that part of your decision, or could it wrap any further so that it's less visible from the street? If the concern is the block, could we add more brick, or are there other trends that say this is the transition point?
I mean, it's under just for the district, for like the actual requirements, just because all these materials have been used in the plaza, we use these, and for budget reasons, brick becomes more expensive, and we wanted to spend more of the money on the front of it than the side, because just to get the historic faux or not, but just to get more of a more historic look to it. So that's where a lot of the money we'd like to go, because
the problem, and this may just be me, but the CMU on the side and the brick in the front and the nice facade that looks so different from the rest of the building, typically when that is done, it's because there are buildings on either side abutting, and you only read the facade from the street. But when you're driving back and forth, it's so apparent, the east and west sides. I think, it just seems like a significant design issue to me.
And going back with just the smooth CMU, where we could come back with maybe some art options, which I think would be really neat, would that be something that would...
I think something like that would be more in keeping with what's going on down there now. Mm-hmm. Normally, like was just pointed out, when you see a crummy masonry wall, and I'm not saying that I'm not talking about your wall, but when you see either a common brick side wall or something like that, it's usually because the building next door got torn down in a historic district, which the other thing is that infill in a historic district is conventionally not what you try to do. You don't try to copy the history. We had that problem recently on another district. It's not that you want the building to look like it was built in the 20s, but that it's a good neighbor that was built with respect to the historic buildings that are in the area. So my preferences are along those lines. That being said, there's enough other stuff like that going on that doesn't move me to want to make a big scene out of it. But the mural is a good idea. And a lot of times they'll paint murals on those old brick walls. You go up to Guthrie and they're restoring some of the old cigar ads and stuff on those buildings, and it's kind of charming.
What would a happy medium with that, to go with the smooth face cinder block, and then we would come back with some, because I know several people that would love to put some artwork on the side of the building, and that would, maybe kind of be a compromise in between the two.
Well, it would give you a reason for using CMU besides the functional reason that you're choosing. I also think that the split face would be it's harder to waterproof, it's harder to take care of. Stuff starts spalling off, so it's there's things you can do, but I would suggest you might look at that.
You've got this brake metal reveal, and in a way, to me, it would feel better if there was a break between the brick and the CMU rather than just having it pick up. And potentially there was an opportunity there, and I'm not trying to be prescriptive, but just from, as I look at it, for that break to be a design element. And rather than saying I went with the CMU to save money, you can just make some fluffy architecture thing up to say, well, the reason we did it behind that was X. So there is the potential, as you transition from material to material, I think, to kind of make it part of your statement and have it read as kind of just a thought rather than just a cost savings measure.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, so it sounds like hopefully everyone's behind the same direction, that maybe come back with some art options, and then the block, the basic CMU seems to be okay. Okay, can we circle back and now talk about this drive issue? Do we want to, if we're going to do a continuance, what would we like to see, Betsy?
Can I touch one more on the materials?
Of course.
It does seem awkward unless, of course, you have a specific like art panel on the east side, which really benefits your neighbor more than it does you. But it does seem awkward that the brick stops before another building starts. And I know you need to probably provide some fire rating up to, do you know what the distance is, Tyler?
I think it's 10.
Is it 5 feet or something like that?
I think it's 10.
On the back wheel, the stairway, we had to do 10 feet from each step, up and out.
Okay.
So I assume it'd be on the front 10 feet also.
Yeah, probably so. Anyway, that's just, that's where it's really awkward to me. I'm not so upset about the other side. It's just that side is really part of the Plaza District, part of the pedestrian life. It would be nice if that wasn't as, do some fluffy architectural thing. Isn't that what you said, George?
Fluff.
Fluff.
And I would prefer not to continue this. If we could do the CMT and come back with some art or something later, I mean, I would like to move forward with this, if that would be possible.
Because one comment actually is, so Okanor in the district, they have a face on the east side of their building, and as they actually had the We Are Thunder mural on it, and they actually ended up painting over it later and added something more specific, like tenant related. So depending on art will go there. It just could be tenant specific. So to probably continue the process on our end, that's another thing to think about. I don't know. So I don't know if that made sense.
Just to clarify, Betsy, what you were saying, on the east side, were you talking about running the front brick veneer back to the Chiltepes building? Is that what?
I'm not sure if they do, they'll have to do some additional engineering for fire.
Okay.
So there may be a logical reason why they would. That would be a nice one.
I do go back to my fluff comment. If your building was engaging that corner and it felt like it was part of a comprehensive design, it would just feel better. It would just feel more intentional and maybe get us to talking about what art instead of the CMU itself.
As is, it's currently abutting like an EFIS restaurant, so this material, in all honesty, is a rather large improvement, truthfully.
What I'm saying is you've got these reveals that don't relate to anything that I can tell, and that potentially right now it just looks like you just abutted the CMU wall to an existing building, and that I feel there's an opportunity there to dress that up in order for it to feel like you're engaging the building, but you're still doing the CMU, whatever you want, changing material however you want. So, just my opinion.
No, I think all these comments are good. I'm kind of, part of me really wants to help Jeff and wants this project to go forward because he does just great work. And of course, Lisa's looking at me saying, you can't do that kind of thing, and of course, I know I can't. So this is all a way of hopefully easing into what I'm about to say, which is, I think we got to continue it. I mean, unfortunately, there's so many things that are floating around, and there's the drive, and I frankly don't. I mean, just personally, just speaking for me, I don't feel good about approving the drive that is going to be a little bit of a nod, wink, wink. We got to get the truck in there when, if it's going to be two-way traffic, then let's go see if we can get a variance for it. That's again my personal feeling. And some of the ideas we're talking about that maybe Jorge is mentioning, or some of the art stuff, I think it has to be a little bit more codified. That's just me. Maybe we'll get a motion here just to approve it based on what we talked about, and fine. If someone has a motion like that, please feel free to offer it. Otherwise, I'd like to hear any other comments or ideas or motions that people might want to put out there.
Because also with the last meeting, I guess the date changed, so we've been over 3 months to get here, or 2.5 months also. So we've had some. So that was on me because we didn't. We realized the date got moved up for submittal for the past meeting, and we were ready on the day. Normally it was at. So we are already a couple months into this process.
Okay, commissioners, somebody do something, or say something, or ask something.
Can you address the driveway again? The comment was it wouldn't need to be that wide if the, you talked about having it rolled out to the street. So is that an option, and could you narrow that so that's not, you don't have such a wide setback?
Well, we want that to be kind of a nice, especially with the art, to have it more of a community walkway too. So we like and also we're trying to be friendly to our neighbor that's residents next to it too, where we're not just right on top of the next door neighbor.
Jeff, I'm just going to reiterate what Brian said earlier. I think it'd be great for you to talk to various trash companies, find out what your options are. You might find out there's a much better option for the trash than even suggesting that you drive a trash truck back there.
Okay. But I get the sense that even if you didn't have the trash back there, you would want to go ahead and leave that driveway just to give your future tenants or whoever's using the building an opportunity to use it as they see fit. Is that true?
Yes.
So I don't know that it's a trash issue. I think it comes down to, is it the driveway or no driveway?
And the question was, is it one-way or two-way?
It's two-way.
But it's not wide enough to be two-way.
And it would require a variance to do that. I mean, that's something that's going to have to be done with the curb cut and the size of it. I mean, we'll have to do a variance. That's what we're planning on.
We've talked to Development Services, and their interpretation of this layout is that whether the truck backs out or turns around and comes out in a forward motion, it's a two-way driveway, and therefore it needs to be 22 feet wide. So the variance would be required if it's going to be less than that. And I think the other thing you can maybe talk about kind of tied into this issue of talking to trash companies about collection is that if they could roll the bin out from the back and have it picked up over a rolled curb, which is something that John Rex did in their design, that would eliminate the need for an actual curb cut, and that would also help alleviate any concern over potential parking lot developing back behind the building as well. So, and that would eliminate some variances that are associated with the curb cut as well. So that's another way to consider the possibility of handling the trash.
Mike, just let me ask from a staff perspective, it really seems you don't want parking to be back there. Is that?
Our concern, and they have not shown parking stalls on the site plan, and no parking is required in this district because of the urban design overlay. Our concern is that if the pieces are in place for it to become a parking lot, there's a good chance it may become a parking lot. And as everybody on the commission is familiar, the glacial pace of code enforcement, if parking starts back there, it's going to be hard to stop.
Is there some reason, and this is probably maybe an incredibly ignorant question, but is there some reason we don't want them to have parking on that property?
Well, that's the way the plan came in initially. It had 5 parking stalls in the back, but it still had the 12-foot drive. And that would be a situation where we'd be even more adamant, I think, against the variance, because there's just no way to accommodate the movement of cars on the 12-foot drive in two-way traffic. You'd have people coming in off of 16th and cars coming out, and somebody's going to have to back up. And there's not a lot of room. If you're backing up into the parking lot area, there's not a lot of room to get out of the car's way that's coming in. And by the same token, you can't have cars backing up out of the driveway onto 16th to let a car out.
Are there no examples around town of one way that's only 12 feet wide?
Well, I mean, the real
two-way that's 12
real
feet wide?
constraint with this site is there's no alley. If there was an alley here, all these issues would just go away.
Right.
But because there is no alley, I'm not aware of any situations where you have a 12-foot two-way drive.
So
I'm not going to say that they don't exist, because I don't know that throughout the city.
Does the city still maintain the easement in the alley, and it's just been closed? Or what's the scoop with the alley?
That's what I was wondering. Why can't we do ingress, egress on the south side of Chiltepe?
There are fences. There are fences back there. People are...
The back neighbor has a fence, and then Chiltepe.
Yeah, and back neighbors parking a car back there.
There's a building, though.
I don't think there's a building.
At the center line of the alley?
The back fence is in the center of the alley.
You are such an important person in the Plaza District. It seems like you could get that changed.
Well, if it was vacated, they closed that, it would have become the private property of the north and south owners.
And it's been vacated.
Have you approached the property owners about any possibility of an ingress, egress?
Have not.
Right, yeah. I don't know if there's I wish there were some creative, I personally, again, understand the need for parking in the plaza, if that's going to be retail and office. And I understand the dangers of the two-way, one-way, two-way doing through a one-way width, but I wish there were some way we could come up with some creative approach or something that maybe has been done in our city or others that would make it easier to get the variance for that.
Well, and another issue is that we don't want to make him do 24 feet to get people in and out and take that additional 12 feet out of his building. There's no way you could get 2 units on the bottom.
Oh, I completely agree. With
Well,
that.
and talking with J.J. Chambliss, he didn't see a problem with the variance of the curb cut or the 12-foot driveway.
He did not see a problem with that?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
That's a good point, Betsy, because we don't want a driveway taking up half of a lot.
When it's a 50-foot lot.
And the 12-foot drives are, I think you see all the way down 16th Street in the residential driveways, where the home next door, they're probably backing out into the street. And if there was 3 people living there and they parked in their backyard, if they had a garage in the back, they may back out and come out, and they have the same two-way issue on a 12-foot wide driveway. I think to your point of flexibility, because you don't know who your tenant is, if this becomes a restaurant, you may shut that driveway down, and that become all backyard outdoor seating. If it's all office, you may have 5 employees with 5 employee-only parking spots back here with a narrow driveway.
And that's how it is all the way down 6th Street. Most all the garages are in the backyard, so that's what everybody on the whole street is doing.
Can you point out, it's hard for me to read this, how much are you losing for the little bit of landscaping you're proposing on?
We're 16 feet away from the property line, right?
Yeah, correct. So there's 2 feet on both sides, which it just gives a bit of a buffer, and it kind of gives you a little bit more space than just 12. That was the initial thought.
So just so I'm clear, because I'm not sure I understood this at the beginning, you are definitely going to go seek a variance for a 2-way drive for the width that you're showing here?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're going to seek a variance for that, suddenly I'm less concerned, because it's well within your purview to request a variance. I'm not going to preclude you from asking for one. And if you have your dumpster where you have it and the trash company can't get back there to get it and you got to roll it out, well, that's your problem. It's not mine. So that's a chance you're taking. So and we can make seeking of the variance a condition, right?
The project was noticed so that you can make a recommendation to the BOA on all the variances that are required. But because we had recommended a continuance, we have not provided you with recommendations on the variance.
With that language. And your issue, Michael, was that it just is not safe, or you didn't feel it was safe.
We see too many problems arising with traffic flow. And granted, it's probably going to be 4 or 5 stalls back there if they're going to do parking. I have yet to know one way or the other if there's enough room back there for a trash truck to turn around and come out in a forward motion, but if it has to back out, I'd be very concerned. We're also, I think we raised it in the staff report, we're concerned about the introduction of a driveway here just because of the pedestrian nature of the district. And one more driveway is probably something we don't need if there's a way to avoid that. But if the commission is inclined to go that way, then...
There was a drive before, right? Or
there's a driveway there now, pretty much where the building is.
Okay.
Proposed here, yes.
Okay.
What if they had some kind of gate that limited the driveway to, whoever was designated to drive? I can see if somebody is at the Plaza District, there's never parking, they say, oh, there's a driveway, let me go see if there's parking back there, and then all of a sudden there's a conflict. But if it's limited to the people that are utilizing that building specifically, it seems like that could alleviate some of your concerns.
It would be more like employee parking, and that would be probably a better situation than having it open to the general public and having traffic movement at all hours.
And that was in some of our designs. We went back and forth with a gate there. So we're open to that also.
I'd just like to point out, if we approve this site plan and show that 2 feet of landscaping, is it required to be there then? You'd be required to keep it according to the site plan.
Yes.
I don't think it adds much from the street in terms of adding landscaping. I'd rather see more out on the street. It would just be, if we're ready to make a motion at that point, I'd like to say that that's not required. I'd rather give you more width for an added driveway. I know it's only 2 more feet on each side, but it's, to me, if the landscaping isn't adding much.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And if you can accommodate it, fine. I would just say it doesn't need to be required on the site plan as shown. Allow the driveway to function as best it can. That seems to be their priority at this point.
Michael, that landscaping is not required. is it? Are they required for?
No, if they were one lot to the west and they were abutting the R1 property, then they would require a buffer, but because they're not abutting R1, they are not required to have a buffer.
And I'm fine with removing that flower bed.
And you said you were fine with the gate, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the time you do the gate swings, that's probably going to end up eating up about the 2 feet on either side anyway, right?
Is a fair summary of potential conditional approvals, variance for driveway, smooth face CMU with art, and art has to go before art commission anyways, and a transition that could be staff approved potentially between the brick and the split face rather than a straight abutting. It could be a transition similar to the brake metal that's split. So.
How do we do the art part, or how does that become part of the?
Well, without, I mean, you could do it perhaps similar to the way that the art walls were done on the back side of the project in Indiana, which was, you didn't see any actual artwork for those proposals, but it was, I forget the word, it was coordinated through the artwork was going to be coordinated through a group of people that were registered artists and so on and so forth. Perhaps just leave the artwork off at this time and have them come back with a revision to address the artwork at a later date.
Well, the Art Commission would look at it, wouldn't they?
Yes, they would if,
I mean,
it depends on if it's a static display or a changeable display.
Right, but here's where I'm going with this. This is why I'm asking, is that analogy is accurate to an extent. You know, they clearly want the art there. They, you know, one of the reasons would approve the CMU is because art was going to go on it. It's kind of like a, you know, if not for the art, then I might want to see another solution for the CMU. So can the art be mandated as part of the approval, that art does go there? Sure. Somewhere.
Yes, you can make that art goes on there a condition. You may want to specify that that's a mural or some sort of bas-relief, or not. You may just say art. It would go to Arts Commission, but it does have to be recorded in the CA because Arts Commission doesn't issue CAs.
Okay.
But once it goes through Arts Commission, it could be administrative or it could come back to the committee.
Brian, I thought your summary was good, but I personally think it's still too squishy to well, I should shut up. If you want to make a motion, make your motion.
I wanted to hear about the squishy part.
When we're talking about smooth CMU, is that with paint or no paint? Because there's
or is it ground face, for example?
So I think we've got to define that a little bit further. I would support Brian's motion. We just need to maybe define it a little bit more.
I have one other thing about the CMU. I don't know how deep we can get into it, but it really needs to be waterproof. I mean,
And I would want to paint it. I mean,
Yeah.
And then do art on top of it.
Yeah, you'd have to.
No, definitely.
Burnished CMU probably.
Yeah, a burnished CMU would be great. Good idea. Yeah, that would be a perfect art thing.
Okay.
I didn't know you had ideas like that.
Make a motion to approve on the condition that the split face CMU be
be a burnished CMU to be approved and verified by staff. And that would mean an integral color burnished CMU. And the condition that you will apply for art mural to be seen before the Arts Commission, and that you seek a variance for the driveway, and that you add a gate to minimize dual traffic for the public.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Fitzsimmons, seconded by Robeson. All in favor say aye.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, was that?
Yeah.
That was a question.
Oh, I didn't know. Sorry.
I don't want to tie their hands when we say that they would apply for a mural. Is that saying before they receive? At what point? Can they still, how far can they get in their project before they're going to have to apply for this mural?
I think we would issue the CA, and on the CA would say with the condition that a mural be applied, but not hold up the CA until they got the art approval. Because I think what I mostly heard the concern was that the CMU is fine if there really is a mural on it. Is that?
And if there's not a mural,
If
they
there's
would
not a mural,
need to
they have
come
to come
back.
back.
I feel like maybe we stepped too far. That's my opinion.
Okay, well, there's a motion, so you can vote your conscience.
Okay.
We have a couple of clarifications before the vote. The recommendation or the condition regarding the variance tied to both the width of the driveway and the angle of the curb cut and the radii of the curb cuts.
Yes.
Okay, all three of those things.
And my question was, is one of the conditions this transition between materials, or are you?
I'm not going to hold them to that at this point. To me, it would have been a better solution.
Is there some percentage of that west wall that you want covered with art?
Well, that's getting,
Just throwing it out
that's
there.
getting way prescriptive.
I think they've got to design something. And you have to approve it.
Okay, gang, I'm sorry, I got to insist. We have a motion and a second, so let's vote, and then we can discuss further. So, motion by Fitzsimmons, second by Robeson. All in favor say aye.
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 Can you raise your hand, please? Okay. Sellers, aye. Robeson, aye. Charnico, Fitzsimmons, Guillory, and Brunstetter, aye. Any opposed? Nay. And the nays, only because I think we should be doing a continuance, Cervantes and McQuistion. So, thank you very much.
We didn't mention the...
Go ahead.
We didn't mention the lack of landscaping, the landscaping not being required.
I would actually suggest that you go ahead and keep the landscaping. If you've got the extra width, it's not going to change.
Okay, we intended to do that, okay.
And Michael, did you have a couple?
Yeah, you'd need to make a second motion providing the BOA with your recommendation on the variances that are requested. So there's a condition to get the variances, but you also have to make a recommendation to the BOA.
I move that we send a recommendation of approval for the 12-foot sidewalk, the radii, and the sloping
The angle of
driveway.
the 90-degree approach.
Driveway width, angle of the driveway, and
Curb
the...
radii.
Yeah, radii.
Okay, we have a motion by Brunstetter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Sellers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okey doke. Communications, we have the administrative approvals. Michael, you don't have to talk about any of these unless you feel you need to call any out to us or if anyone has any questions to ask about.
The first one is just some changes to the parking lot across the street, south side of 23rd, across the street from the Tower Theater. And the third one is some additional changes that are being made to the Paseo building on Northwest 28th.
Okay, great, thank you. Comments from Planning Department staff?
Election of officers is at the next meeting, so.
Yes, and I will not be chair next year. So there you have it. So, and let's just take this moment to kind of get a lay of the land so the appropriate people can be thinking about what they want to do for next year. So I am term limited out. I'm just here until I get backfilled. And the same goes for Brian, and the same goes for Jeff. So, so as far as I'm concerned, or my personal thought is probably not, those people probably should not be chair because they may be gone at any moment. Then John, I believe your official term is over. You're not going to re-up, but you're helping everybody out by, like us, hanging out until you get backfilled. Okay, so John probably should not be within the consideration set either. Betsy, now how does? Yeah, and you're chair of the DDR. I don't know. Can people be? I'm just curious. If people can be, they can be the chair. Okay, but Betsy's been there, done that, and Lisa stated at the workshop that we should rotate everybody through. So given that background, that suggests Matt, Jorge, Donna, Ben. So you guys, is that right?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify. Matt, Ben, Donna, Jorge, their terms are almost up, but they are eligible to be reappointed, and we're going to. I know they were filling terms that started years ago. But everybody serves until they are replaced. So I just wanted to make clear that shouldn't be an impediment to people stepping up to the plate. You guys are all December. You, George, and Jeff are all December.
No, I think I was December of
14.
Yeah, 14. I'm like living on borrowed time here. In the past. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments from Planning Department staff or from commission members? No? Okay.
Well, Merry Christmas.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. We have a motion by Brunstetter.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have any questions or comments? Oh, okay. Okay.
No, this is my son. He's starting to help me with construction
awesome.
management.
That's
so I said,
terrific.
well, let's come to a meeting and kind of see how this stuff works.
Yeah, well, once you've been, now of course you never want to go to another meeting having gone through this
So
one.
this is Patrick. You probably can't tell that he's my son, but he is.
Awesome. Well, welcome. The next meeting date's in the agenda, and you know what? I don't have to say anything about being adjourned because per Lisa's comments, we just get a mosey on off, and it's going to take place automatically. Thank you, everybody.